what's happening? I'm Anthony Herrick, got Sammy Netling alongside. This is Big Ten Today. Like we talked about, Greg Schiano will be with us in a few minutes. AJ Henning is actually right over there, just watching us work at the moment. You will see the Northwestern star sitting in this chair in a moment. And Sammy Netling is here because we have, I suppose it would be considered a unique finish to the softball season because Michigan has dominated a bunch. Northwestern has dominated in recent years. Now they're both on this collision course down the stretch. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and it's crazy that we very well may not crown our champion until Sunday. This race has become so close down the stretch. You have to tip your cap to the incredible second half of the year that we've seen from the Wolverines, specifically in conference play. After taking that loss, that series where they got swept by the Wildcats back early in April, they have not looked back, have not lost a game since, and have positioned themselves very much still in title contention.
That leads us very nicely into today's big story where the regular season will end in Big Ten softball. And right now in the standings, Northwestern at the top of the heap, 17-2 in conference play. Michigan right there, like you mentioned, Sammy, nipping at their heels with a 17-3 mark, a half game separating them at the top. So right now, with the way that the tiebreakers set up in Big Ten softball, and this is a little bit unique because normally everyone expects to finish with the same amount of regular season games. There was a game canceled for Northwestern while they were in Lincoln, Nebraska. Some really remarkable weather that they had there, so they only got 2 of the 3 games in. So there will be a half game less, it appears, for Northwestern. That's what separates them right now because they were trailing in that game, but it's like it never happened at this point. So Michigan just a half game behind. Let's start with the Cats, though, the 2-time defending Big Ten champions. I mean, I guess the game that didn't exist wasn't going so well. So how would you say that Northwestern at this point in the season, getting ready to close things out, how are they playing right now?
I think you take away that one game, right? And this was a team that has by and far been on top of the standings and leading the conversation since day one. They have been the most consistent, in my opinion, throughout Big Ten play. They, of course, have a stellar arm in the circle in Ashley Miller. And you look at just the lineup, the roster turnover that they've experienced, and they somehow continue to find a way, next man up, with a host of underclassmen, with a host of freshmen in their lineup, to be leading the pack still. And you're right. That game 2 on Saturday that they did not finish was, in my opinion, probably one of Miller's poorest performances of the year. Her earliest exit of the season was
just 1 inning, right?
I think she went 1 out in the second before being pulled. But yeah, I think if you're the Wildcats, blessing in disguise, right? You have an opportunity to press the reset button, come back to home where you love to play. They have curated Evanston to be one of the toughest places, atmospheres to play in the country right now. And so you have an opportunity to punch a three-peat ticket. I mean, this is exactly what I think they wanted going into the last weekend.
I had an opportunity to talk to Kate Drohan not too long ago on my Big Ten radio show, and I was asking her about the youth on this team because there was so much turnover, so much churn in the roster. We weren't exactly sure what to expect for Northwestern this season, and they looked a bit young early in the year, right? But she's talked about how fun it's been to watch this young crew develop. What have been your observations about the development they've gotten, to sort of lead them to this point?
Yeah, I think this is a freshman class in particular that didn't shy away from being the ones to step into the spotlight after that prolific class of fifth years, right? They were eager, they were hungry for the opportunity. They very much knew what was on the line, right? You have back-to-back Big Ten champions. You have a roster that was really the shining star of the Big Ten Conference over the last half decade, in my opinion. And they were eager to not just let this be a rebuilding year, but really a reloading year. And so you look at, they're not jumping off the page statistically. You still have the seniors, the sophomores, really the offensive stars of this lineup. But you have a host of freshmen that are stepping up defensively in big moments, are stepping up offensively when the lineup needs them. And so I think they've just created some balance that I think was definitely unexpected coming into 2024.
Let's go ahead and set the scene for the final weekend in conference play. Taking a look at what the schedule from Friday to Sunday will look like this weekend. Penn State at Rutgers, Michigan State at Purdue, and the team and the series that we'll get a deeper dive into here in a moment. Indiana at Northwestern. If Northwestern sweeps that one, they will secure their third consecutive Big Ten championship. Maryland is at Wisconsin, Iowa at Illinois, Nebraska and Minnesota with some seeding on the line in that one, and Ohio State at Michigan, where the Wolverines are hoping that if they take care of business, they will have an opportunity at that regular season crown. So let's go a little deeper dive into Indiana versus Northwestern. I mean, specifically the speed on the base pass, because the Hoosiers, for whatever reason, the numbers indicate they should have been, to this point, a more successful team than they've been. But specifically the matchup on the base pass, especially with Ray behind the plate for the Cats, that to me is one of the really intriguing aspects here.
Yeah, absolutely, right? This is one of the most dynamic offenses in the conference right now, let alone in the country, right? They're going to hit the long ball, but they are so active on the base pass. And so we talked about how do these freshmen for Northwestern continue to step up. Emma Ray is going to have a huge weekend. She is going to be tested without question in every single game 1 through 9, right? This is also not a lineup that has stolen bases from just a cluster of players throughout the lineup. 1 through 9, they can take the extra 60 feet, and they will. And so, especially coming off of a weekend where the Hoosiers struggled to get things going offensively a little bit against Wisconsin, I have to imagine that Coach Stanton's squad is going to try to test this young Northwestern defense early and often throughout this series.
Ashley Miller has been so great for Northwestern throughout the season. Do you need to see more consistency beyond Ashley Miller on the mound for them, in the circle for them, to ensure that they're going to be as good as they can be down the stretch?
I would say yes, without question, right? You always want to have more than one arm in the mix, especially going into a tournament style next week where it is single game elimination, right? Yeah. She's not going to be able to throw all 4 games or all 4 days if they get there. But I think it's a question that we haven't really asked throughout the season because we haven't needed to. The other arms in the Northwestern bullpen have done enough, right? You typically have Miller start and finish game 1. You have a slew of pitching by staff in game 2 to just get the job done, allow your offense to put up some big runs. And then Miller's been sometimes closing game 2 as well. And then of course is going to start and finish game 3. And so I think coming off of a weekend where we did see arguably the most inconsistency in her game in the circle so far this season, it's definitely something where I'll be curious, how early do they potentially pull her if she gets in trouble, right? Again, it hasn't been a question mark. She hasn't really gotten in trouble all season long, but this is a potent Hoosier offense when they get going. They are prolific, not just on the base pass, but they have a ton of power, a ton of pop as well, 1 through 9, and they can be very dangerous. I think the question mark for me is, are they going to have a game plan for Miller's changeup? It's truly one of the best in the conference in terms of the way that she layers it, when she executes it, and so I think if they can go in and have a game plan of just, are we going to zone it? Are we going to lay off of it completely until we have 2 strikes? I think this is going to be a very exciting matchup down the line to potentially, crown a Big Ten title.
And Cammie Henry coming off one of her best outings of the season as well, so maybe she can be in that mix to be the additional arm that they can really count on as they enter postseason play. Before we move on from that series, specifically the catcher position, we were talking about Emma Ray a moment ago. Indiana leads the Big Ten in home runs. The only team with over 100 stolen bases in the conference. For a freshman at catcher, what's the approach that she and, frankly, Northwestern's coaches have taken to sort of, in some ways take advantage of her aggression while maybe in some situations curtailing it a bit?
Yeah, Ray is fearless with her arm behind the dish, and I love it. She's going to have to be that way this weekend, right? As soon as you hesitate, you see a runner going, you hesitate, Hoosiers are going to be safe. And so I think, at times she has probably gotten a little bit too aggressive with, the back picks to second, et cetera. But tip your cap to Coach Rohan. She encourages it, right? She wants her freshmen to play free, to play competitively, to play aggressively. And so I think, you're probably going to see some instances where, they do, schedule some pitch outs or some specific back picks to make sure their corners, or their middles are covering accordingly, just making sure that the infield the infield in front of Ray is ready for when she lets it loose with the speed that the Hoosiers have on the base paths.
Absolutely remarkable arm talent. It's fun to watch, especially when folks are silly enough to attempt to run on Emma Ray. Let's go to the Ohio State at Michigan series coming up here with the Wolverines, 13 wins in a row, an opportunity at a Big Ten championship if things end up falling their way. What stands out about the turn that Michigan's made this season, because they didn't start off being a team that was performing at the peak of their powers?
Yeah, this was a team that was 70 plus in the RPI coming into conference play, and they have scratched, clawed, won their way back into the top 30. And so I think, the turnaround for me 100% is offensively. This is a team, a roster that has always been so strong in the circle, even going back to last year when they didn't have the finish that is typical of a Michigan softball team, but they've never wavered in the circle. They have a stud in Durkowski. They returned all of their arms, added another one in Aaron Hayne. That freshman has been really, really stellar for them down the stretch, but offensively was still the question mark. And so when they turn the page and we've seen them go on just this winning streak at the back half of conference play, it's been because of the offensive production. Honestly, at times the offense has bailed out the pitching because we've seen specifically Durkowski and Haynes struggle with their consistency, with their control, giving up a little bit too many free passes down the stretch. And offensively, they have time and time again bailed them out. This is a strong lineup 1 through 9, is way more balanced, I think, than what we saw in 2023. And you talk about the freshmen for Northwestern. I mean, Michigan has a slew of them themselves, just back to back to back in the lineup. Valamont, Costales, Conway, Stevenson, and they have really elevated this lineup to be that more balanced approach, both in the contact game as well as hitting for power. And so I think, when both aspects of their game are on, right, when you have Hayne and Durkowski and even a Hannah George that's thrown some good innings down the stretch, really firing in the circle and on their game, and you have the offensive power that we've seen over the past couple of weeks, this is a very, very dangerous Michigan Wolverine team.
And then the second season for Bonnie Thole, I mean, you replace the all-time great, you replace the GOAT in Hutch, and now Thole comes in her second season and has them looking like the Michigan that we've come to expect here. Some tight games they've won as of late, and Durkowski, like you referenced, she was through March at 1.68 ERA, then it ballooned throughout much of April. How big a deal is it for them, not only that Durkowski is really starting to look like herself again, but they've won some tight games, and it's going to matter as you approach the stretch run?
100%. You drop 1 or 2 of those, right, and your record feels completely different. You're out of this title conversation at this point in the season, and so I think that's the difference this year from last year, right? It's one, believing when you get in those tight games that we have the roster both in the circle and in the box to compete, to finish this game. And let's face it, right? Winning and learning how to win is a skill in itself. And this Wolverine team struggled to find their identity of how to win last year, right? There was so much expectation, both with Hutch retiring as well as their All-American, arm in the circle and Alex Duraco transferring to Oklahoma. And I think, Durkowski has really stepped up. And I think this year in particular, we've seen her struggle at times when she puts that pressure on herself because she has so high expectations of what she can do in the circle. But when she plays to her potential, when she plays free, when she plays with confidence and really trusts her stuff, right? This is an athlete that is as good as any in the country, right? I mean, she's top in 70 at times with her velocity, and when she has her off-speed firing as well, I think she has all the potential to really elevate this Wolverine team to go on a tournament run, not just in conference play, but also in NCAAs.
Well, Sammy, we will have you back later in the show as well, because championship implications on the line, postseason berths, not only in the Big Ten, but throughout the sport. We'll have a lot more to talk about with Sammy Netling. But still to come, Northwestern wide receiver A.J. Henning. He took a trip down to Kennedy to join us. We'll talk about everything Cats in studio with him in a bit. But first, the boss from the birthplace, Greg Schiano, will be with us live. That's coming up next on Big Ten Today. Welcome back to the Big Show. We start by looking back at Rutgers' Saturday spring game, where the Scarlet edged out the White 30-24. Gavin Wimsatt and Minnesota transfer Ethan Kaliak-Manis dueled at quarterback for each team. Wimsatt went 8 out of 16, 76 yards and a touchdown. Cadillac Manis went 10 out of 17 in the game, 147 yards, 2 tutties for him in that QB battle taking place in Piscataway. Our big stat today takes us to Piscataway, where Rutgers is coming off its first winning season since 2014. It's the 9th time in the last 20 years that the Scarlet Knights have finished with a winning season. Greg Schiano, the winningest coach in program history, was at the helm for 7 of those 9 seasons. And that does bring us also to the NFL draft, where Max Melton was sensational for Rutgers this past season. That success led Melton to be a second-round pick. It came off the board and went to the Arizona Cardinals, 5th highest Rutgers player selected in the common era of the NFL draft. There's a lot that we're looking forward to getting into in today's big interview, and we have the aforementioned Greg Schiano joining us now. And Coach, with the direction that things are going with your program, there's understandably a lot of excitement for what this next season will bring, but the NFL draft just happened. Max Melton, as I've referenced, came off the board in the 2nd round. So as we look back at that accomplishment for him and for your program, what did that mean to you?
Well, I was really happy for Max. He worked so hard to achieve that. He's really a talented guy, but, one that maybe flew under the radar a little bit coming out of high school. And that goes to show you with, all the rankings and all those things. Max was the 43rd best player in the country, according to the NFL draft. So very, very exciting. He'll do a great job. He'll play in that league a long time.
Yeah, could not agree more. The mentality that you tend to infuse into your team, I think that is a big part of the reason why. And the spring game itself, a lot of your players wanting to show some of that mentality in front of the fans for the first time there. And I was struck because I had an opportunity last season to see the boardwalk outside the stadium, one of the most unique pregame atmospheres that I see anywhere. They actually brought the boardwalk inside the stadium somehow. What went into that?
Well, I'll tell you, we have some people here that are really creative, led by PJ. He's special, and he caught me in a moment of weakness. He said, "What do you think, Coach? We bring it in the stadium?" And I agreed. But it was awesome. Our fans loved it. They were down on the field. They were watching the game. They were on the Ferris wheel and playing the games. And again, that's what I want. I want our program to be a program that the entire family can come be a part of. And we work hard to do that in an environment where we have pro football teams all around us, pro basketball, pro baseball. So this needs to be something different, and I think our people do a great job of putting together that boardwalk during the season, and then to bring it onto the field was really cool.
It is fantastic. I have ridden the Ferris wheel. I have had the food. It is like no other when it comes to pregame festivities. I cannot wait to get an opportunity to do it again. And I mean, you got a little bit of free time coming up here. I mean, if it's not the boardwalk, are you a big roller coaster guy? I mean, we maybe going to see some theme parks coming up here?
Yeah, when my kids were younger, I used to do the theme park, but I'll take it a little slower than that. Maybe hit the beach for a little bit.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Go down to the shore. I'm sure you'll be able to relax down there just a little bit. And you mentioned after the spring game earlier in the week here, just that you were pleased your team was able to make it through the spring game with no real health consequences. And it seems like, as we watch a lot of things around college football evolve, the concern for health is always there, but the way it's prioritized just to get through without significant injuries and the way you handle spring, has that evolved over time from your perspective?
I think it has. I think we've become smarter with sports science, and we can rely on different things. But at the end of the day, it's a fine line, because this is a tough game played by tough people, and you need to go do things to become tough. You need to hit each other. You need to practice. So we really try to walk that fine line, and we got to practice 15, and a lot of our starters were if they were injured, they weren't going to be long-term injuries, and we made a conscious decision that it was going to be a bunch of the young guys getting a chance to show what they do, and I thought it was a great opportunity. And the thing that pleased me most is it looked like a football game, even though 20 or 25 guys didn't take part in it. So it's a positive that we're building depth, that things are going in the right direction. And like I say to the players all the time, it's stepping stones, right? So now we went from spring. That gives us a chance to have a good summer. If we can have a good summer, it'll give us a chance to have a good training camp. And then a good training camp, that'll give us a chance to have a great season. And what has to happen is it's one step at a time.
One of the aspects that'll be new once we get to this next college football season will be the helmet communication between players and the play callers. And we've seen that in the NFL with the green dot guys on each side of the ball for a long time. You've been in a position where you've been able to manage that at the NFL level. Now it's coming to college football, and you've tested it out a bit this spring. Is there anything about that that'll function a bit differently because it's college football versus when professional athletes getting the opportunity to do it?
You know, I think as long as you practice with it, I think you'll be fine. You're right. We have experience with it. Several guys on our staff, including myself. So it's one of those things that really the two big changes, the helmet communication and the tablets. I think the tablets are even a bigger change because we have video on these tablets. You know, in the NFL, it's still shots. Well, now there's video. So how you figure it all out, how you're going to use it, how you're going to have workflow, those are things that coaches will spend a lot of time on, have spent time on, and will spend a lot of time on leading up to training camp and getting ready for the season. So technology is certainly making a big push in 2024.
And who's going to sponsor it and make money off of it with a big logo on the other side of the tablet? There's going to be all kinds of stuff that get involved in that too.
Always is.
Yes, no doubt. I'm looking forward to getting involved in the conversation about your quarterback position, as most Rutgers fans are. You ended up adding Ethan Cadillac-Manis to your program, really talented player who had, of course, been with the Gophers prior to now. As he went into the transfer portal, what made Ethan Cadillac-Manis the type of player that you didn't want to pass on the opportunity to get him in?
Well, I think it starts with Coach Shiraka. You know, Coach Shiraka recruited him and worked with him at Minnesota. So we knew exactly what Ethan is and what he was going to be able to do. His brother Dino came with him, which he had a good spring as well. So I'm excited. You know, I think our quarterback room is as strong as it's ever been in all my years as the head coach here at Rutgers. And I know that it's a very fluid thing when you talk about college personnel, right? Because there is a transfer portal, there is NIL, there's all those things that make it that way. So what you do is you literally take it day by day. You have a plan, but you got to be ready to adjust. And I feel really good about Ethan. I feel good about Gavin. And I feel good about our other two quarterbacks as well. You know, they're doing a good job. So we have some depth at the position, but, you know, you don't know how long that lasts all the time.
I was fortunate to call the game where Gavin Wimsatt made his debut. He got the one snap for you a few seasons. That felt like just moments after he reclassified from high school, joined your program, got that one snap against Illinois. Frankly, Coach, you didn't put him in a very easy position on a fourth down where he completes a 13-yarder, and that was how he sort of burst onto the scene for Rutgers fans. In the years since then, where he's been sort of, helming the quarterback position for you, how have you seen Gavin Wimsatt begin to mature and evolve into the guy he is today?
Well, he's made great strides. Certainly, that was a heck of a play, right? You're not kidding. It wasn't an easy stage to walk onto. I was really, really proud of him. But he's grown his understanding of the game. He's grown in his ability to use his mobility to his advantage. I think Coach Shiraka has done some good things that have allowed him to do that. So he's been a weapon both with his legs and his arm. But most importantly, the growth he's made as a quarterback is what excites me the most.
Rutgers fans very excited about that. You mentioned the depth that you have at that position. We do know your backfield, while it's deep, has a star, the leading returning rusher in the Big Ten, led the conference last season, and Kyle Monangai decided to come back for yet another season in Piscataway. Were you pleasantly surprised by it? What were those conversations like before Monangai made his announcement?
Well, they were real. I mean, we went right through it and hashed it out. And, certainly he didn't have a wrong decision. He just needed to make what was the most right decision for him. And I think he did that. I think he's got a great year looking him in the face right now. We got to get him to training camp and get him going. And I think, again, the depth with Sam Brown and some others behind Kyle, it'll give him a chance not to have to carry the ball, 25, 30 times a game. And certainly over time, that extends his longevity during the season.
Are there any particular aspects of Kyle's game that either you or perhaps even himself want to make sure he'll focus on enhancing as he heads towards the fall?
Well, I got to tell you, I thought he was a pretty complete running back last fall, because he had worked up to that. It wasn't like he just burst on the scene. He was improving constantly since he enrolled. Now I think it's more about, perfecting the understanding of every play, perfecting, he does a lot of things that helps our quarterbacks get it right. He's a very intelligent player. He'll make corrections on the protections. He'll do it all. He is a very, very bright guy. So, yeah, it's more about, making small incremental growth in every area of his game, which will add up again to an even more productive back, which, he's quite productive in 23, and we look forward to him being even more productive in 24.
I love defensively how you roll so many bodies through in a given game. You keep guys fresh, you keep guys playing with energy. Now you're going through a spring where you have so much experience that'll return for this fall. How do you go about when a bunch of guys know the system, they know they've had success in it, how do you keep them engaged and continuing to find ways to improve?
Well, I thought we played well at times last year. I also thought there were times where we let down. And, our front seven really is a strength of ours, but at times our D-line didn't perform to their capabilities last year. So I really went into this spring. We really have made a conscious effort to improve at all the little things. And I think that we've done that. And I think we have to continue that this summer and into training camp because we have some guys that I think are elite players that we need to make sure they play that way in the clutch. And we will. And I think we're backed up by a secondary that has experience, guys that understand what we're doing. And again, being those small incremental improvements that allow you to kind of have an effect as a group, that's going to be the key.
Now, you told me multiple times last fall, Coach, that you felt like you were maybe one more cycle away from having the level of competitive depth in your roster where you felt like you're ready to compete at the highest of levels here. So you're through the spring. How are you feeling about the depth of your roster right now?
I feel good. Yeah, I think if we started today, we'd have a good 10-man rotation on the defensive front, which is what you really aim for. I think at linebacker, we have depth, really good depth at linebacker. So, we have two seniors, guys that are going to be NFL players in Mo Toure. Mo has had a great spring. And then Tyreen Powell, who's recovering from injury, he had a tremendous year last year. So those two guys are backed up by really some good young linebackers, Moses Walker, DJ DeBomi. I think you saw in the game, in the bowl game, some young guys making plays. So I'm really excited about our development at that position. And again, we just have to keep making that incremental improvement. We call it chopping, but just keep hitting the spot over and over again, and good things will happen.
Well, we certainly do anticipate that. There's no doubt about it, Coach. Appreciate you taking the time today. And whether it's at the beach or on a roller coaster or whatever, enjoy a little bit of free time when you can.
All right, I appreciate that. You do the same.
That is Greg Schiano from Rutgers. Now we transition to one of the most electrifying players in the Big Ten Conference. A.J. Henning will be with me in studio. Going to do my best to corral one of the quickest cats. What a playmaker A.J. Henning has been throughout his college football career. 616 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns between his time at Michigan and Northwestern, over 2,200 career all-purpose yards. He's been all Big Ten a couple of different times, multiple institutions. He is honored with his talents, 45 receptions, 418 yards, 4 touchdowns last season for the Cats. And now I have found a way to catch him. Most defenders cannot corral A.J. Henning, and yet here you are, man. Really appreciate you being here in studio with us on Big Ten today. And the transition that you made, going from Michigan, where you had so much success, and now getting through a season in Evanston, where you get to be a bit closer to home, of course. How's it been, man? Have you enjoyed playing in this proximity to your family?
Oh, yeah, no doubt. After graduating from Michigan, making the transition here closer to home, coming back home, it was great. Being an hour from my hometown, being able to have, lots of families come up to the games, and, just having a year under my belt in Evanston, it's been a lot of fun. This past season was a lot of fun.
And I mean, I was just talking to Greg Schiano a few minutes ago about Kyle Monangai and being a guy who could have potentially gone to the National Football League, came back for another year. You're certainly the level of player in that same milk. How much thought did you give to maybe going and trying your hand at the NFL now versus returning like you're going to do?
Yeah, no doubt. Those were definitely conversations that I had, and, talking with my family and coaches, and just kind of getting having real honest conversations about, the next level, and we just came down to the conclusion, benefiting me and my process, it would be best to come back for another year.
Now, having multiple institutions that you've played for, of course, the University of Michigan, where you made so many plays and did so well during your time there, program went on to win a national championship this past season. I would imagine you stay in touch with some of the guys in Ann Arbor who you had a lot of memories with. What was it like watching them go win it all?
Man, it was great. It was great. Like you said, I'm in contact with those guys. Some of them still on the daily to this point. So, just seeing all the hard work come to fruition and them being able to accomplish a goal that, I was a part of and, we talked about on the daily of, going to win a national championship. It was something really special to see, and I marveled at, all the hard work and everything they accomplished this year. It was really cool to see.
And speaking of accomplishments, you guys at Evanston certainly had some this past season as well. And when you first transferred into the program, I don't know if you knew exactly what you were going to be getting into. No one could have anticipated the way the offseason went last year for Northwestern. Somehow you guys came together behind Coach Braun and not only put together a winning record in the Big Ten, but 8 wins on the whole. Did it feel special to be able to be involved in what ended up being a really remarkable season for Northwestern football?
Yeah, it was special, and it was something that I'll never forget. Being a part of something like that is something that, the guys in the locker room going to work every day, you could see it in their eyes. You could see the work that they were that was being put in to have a season like that. You know what I'm saying? Having Coach Braun there and, working every day with us and, giving it his all and us giving it our all every day, we're working to something special. And nobody else may have believed in the Cats, but, the guys in the locker room and our coaching staff, they believed in us to do something special. So it was remarkable.
I had a blast calling the game you guys played against Minnesota, where you were down by 21 points in the fourth quarter. It seemed like Minnesota early in that fourth quarter had a fourth down touchdown run that maybe had punctuated the game for them when they got up by 3 scores. Was that a moment, perhaps the moment in the season where you and your new Northwestern teammates really began to believe, we're capable of doing something special?
Yeah, I think that was a statement win for our season, of course. I think that embodies what the program is all about. You know what I'm saying? Like, beginning of the fourth quarter, down by 21 points, and you storm back and make a comeback. All the adversity is just all the odds against you, and you do something like that that's special. You kind of look at yourself a little different coming out of that game. You have a little bit of swagger, a little bit of belief to you that you're seeing the hard work that you put in show up tangibly on the field.
And it was a game where not only, you as a returner, but you made big plays as a receiver down the stretch, leading Northwestern back into that game too. And so we've seen that aspect of your game evolve and begin to really develop what you can be as a playmaking wideout. Now you got a new OC coming in, yet another offensive system that you'll be tasked with learning here in your college career. What's it been like so far? Zach Lujan coming in, going through a spring with him. How do you feel like the education process of this new offensive system is going?
Oh, Coach Lujan's been great. I would say this spring has been great, just learning the system. Me being in my 3rd offense now as a veteran guy, it's kind of easy to kind of pick up on the offense. So, but no, he's been great. He brings great energy every day, and he just comes with just the way what he brings every day to us. He's a great guy, great coach, and great leader.
And it seemed like, there's obviously been some adjustments on the coaching staff, but to be able to have that energy that really gets infused to things, it can be something that's infectious for a team as you guys are trying to build something together. Do you have a sense yet for how your role in this offense may end up evolving, versus what you were able to do last year?
I would just say just being a complete wide receiver, being a complete playmaker. Anything they ask me to do, I'm going to be able to do it. And I'll do it to the best of my ability, whether that's on the outside, whether that's on the inside, whether that's jet sweeps, screens. I'm all for it, and I'm excited to do it.
Now, Brendan Sullivan, one of your teammates from last season, he ended up recently hitting the transfer portal, as you may be aware. So the quarterback position will end up being a bit different for you guys this coming fall. How do you see your role then with one quarterback, one veteran now leaving the program? Do you see your role now impacting what the quarterback position will look like, whomever's going to be behind center for Northwestern? Will you have to have a leadership role in making sure they're as ready as possible?
I think my leadership role as a whole, just being a veteran guy who's played a lot of football, is there and prominent in the program to begin with. But I just know that the coaches are doing a great job, and the guys are in that room, the quarterback room, are doing a great job of continuing to develop and continue to be prepared, when their opportunity comes.
Well, one of the places that we've always seen throughout your entire career is when you're back returning the football. And I always love asking guys who are so exceptional at it like you, just to sort of take us inside that moment, that mentality when the ball is in flight. I don't know if things go silent for you, if you hear everything that's surrounding you, if you know these big angry people are breathing and sweating, getting ready to take your head off. What is that like as the ball's in flight?
Talking with a special teams coordinator that I had to begin my career, he told me, you got to be kind of crazy to have this job. All 11 guys on the field are running after you, and you're focused on the ball in the air, trying to catch the ball, and then you have to, make a play after. So I would say when I'm back there, my mindset of being a returner is first focusing on the football, making sure all my keys are right, making sure I'm square, catching the ball, and, elbows together and all those things of that nature. But, that's just such a big play in the game, and people kind of downplay it, Special teams is a huge part of the game, and it can be a momentum shifting play that can make or break a game down the stretch. So I'm just excited to, continue to step into that role and continue to affect the game in any way I can, especially in that special teams role for sure.
And you're one of the best at it. There's no doubt about that. And some of the players who went on to the National Football League will be able to make their way because of what they do on special teams. We're going to have AJ sit right here. We're going to talk about the NFL draft that we just witnessed, some of the Big Ten prospects on their way to the National Football League and how that may continue to evolve for him and his program. It was a big weekend for the Big Ten Conference in the NFL draft. A lot of conjecture that maybe Michigan would lead the way, and oh boy, did they. 13 selections for the Wolverines in the NFL draft, most of any school this season, fourth most all time. You see that Penn State had 8 players selected, both Iowa, the Ohio State University, and Illinois all had 4 players selected as well. AJ Henning continuing with me here in studio and in watching the draft this past weekend. Then were you surprised at all by the amount of players selected out of Ann Arbor, many of them who you have played with?
Man, this is my class, so these are my guys. These are the guys that I came into school with and seen all the hard work that they put in. So it was a really special weekend for me to kind of see up close and personal, their process that they went through from years back dating to work to now to having a lot of guys be selected and have the opportunity to play at the next level. So a dream come true for those guys, and I'm just proud and just happy to see their dreams come true.
Are you utilizing this as an opportunity to maybe pick the brain of some of the guys as they're going through the process, just kind of taking notes because you'll be in their shoes really months from now?
Yeah, this was the first draft that I was able to see up close and personal and kind of get the background of how the process is behind closed doors. So just seeing those and having those conversations of what it's like and what they're going through on a daily basis of what the process is like is definitely something that I've taken note on, and I'm going to prepare myself to the best of my ability to be prepared for it next year.
J.J. McCarthy was the first Wolverine off the board. He ended up being a first-round pick, and his name was one that a lot of folks were talking about, just trying to figure out how high would he go, what type of situation would he end up going into. When you think of J.J., as well as you know him and have gotten to play with him in the past, what stands out about the type of pro he can become?
Man, that kid's straight up a baller. That's what I'll say, straight up a baller. I've known him from dating back early days of high school, training with him, and then going to Michigan and being around him every day. He's a guy that the locker room wants to rally around. First off, the player that he is, and most importantly, the person that he is. He's a special guy to be around. He's a special talent, and he's going to be a superstar in Minnesota for sure. With the offensive weapons that they have and what they'll do with him, he's going to be a good player for them for a long time.
And there was a stretch there in the midst of the draft where Michigan kind of took over the draft, just several picks in a row. Blake Corum, another offensive star who's meant so much to that program over the years, both on the field and off. And he dealt with injury, came back from it, and put another fantastic season together. What do you think the professional game is getting in Blake Corum?
Oh, just the type of player he is and the type of person he is. Like you said, he does a lot of work in the community. He's a great friend of mine as well. So he's one of the hardest working guys who I've been around as well too. So just seeing him go to work every day, seeing the type of player he is, seeing the adversity he battled through last year, and to come back and have a season like he had. He foregone the NFL draft last season and came back and said he wanted to do something special and go after a national championship, and that's exactly what he did while having a special season. I think he broke the the Michigan scoring record in touchdowns this year, and he, special year for him, and so happy for him and what he's able to do.
There was a guy that came out of my alma mater who ended up being a 4th-round pick. It's one of the highest selections that has happened with a punter in well over about 20 years. I think the last time a punter had gotten selected in the 4th round. And Tory Taylor, you've had to deal with him on the field quite a bit. Chicago Bears take a punter in Tory Taylor in round number 4. You've been on the other end of his punts. What is that like when you're dealing with Tory Taylor and his talents as you're trying to field the football?
It definitely didn't surprise me that he was taken that high. When I get my prep work for at the beginning of each week of game week, you kind of get the hang time of a punter and different statistics on him. And, when I'm going up against him that week, I'm watching film on him. I'm seeing how much difficulty the opposing punt returners are having trying to catch his punts. And he's a great player. Has a strong leg, and he's going to be great for the hometown team, the Bears. Yes, sir.
You mentioned the fact that you've always been a guy who's had the potential to do, jet sweeps, screen game, in cuts, all these types of things. A talent like Johnny Newton, sometimes a defensive tackle that hustles around in the way that he does, getting drafted from the Illini. Every once in a while, you might have to bang with a big guy like that as he's trying to chase you down. What were your observations of the career Johnny Newton put together with the Illini and what he can be in the NFL?
Oh, he's very destructive. I would say that. Game planning against him, you got to take account for him on all angles on the offensive line and what you're trying to do. He's very disruptive in the pass game and in the run game as well. So he was definitely a player that we keyed in on and had to game plan around when we were playing Illinois this year. And he's going to be a special player as well at the next level.
Yeah, I cannot wait to see what he does there. Looking forward to watching as you make the transition to the NFL a year from now. Also, what are some of the aspects of your game? And you're starting to take notes like we were talking about. How do you want your game to continue to develop as you try to make your path to the NFL?
I think this year just putting together a complete body of work. I'm going to play a little more outside receiver this year, so just showing off my route tree, being polished up in my routes, and just continue to be a playmaker that I've always been, showing what I can do in all aspects of my game. Like you said, receiver, return game as well. That's a huge aspect of my game. So just putting together a full body of work and being prepared is, I think, will be the right steps to take to prepare myself for a year from now.
Well, we can tell you're not only polished as a receiver, very polished right here at this desk, man. Outstanding stuff today, AJ. We got to do this again.
Oh, yeah. Let's do it.
All right, we'll make that happen with AJ Henning of Northwestern. When we return, we'll get some softball conversation going again with Sammy Netling. The NCAA tournament, the College World Series. We're trying to figure out what's going to happen. Sammy will tell us next. Time to go around the Big Ten, starting with the Big Ten men's lacrosse tournament semifinals, which take place Thursday in Columbus. 4th-seeded Michigan takes on the top seed Johns Hopkins at 6 Eastern. Then 3rd-seeded Penn State takes on number 2 Maryland at 8:30. Both can be seen on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. The Big Ten women's lacrosse tournament also heads to the semis on Thursday in Evanston. 5th-seeded Johns Hopkins takes on the top seed and the number 1 team in the country, Northwestern, at 1 p.m. Eastern. Then 6th-seeded Rutgers plays number 2 Penn State. You can see both on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. Big Ten softball teams in the top 50 of the RPI. We were just talking about it a bit earlier in the show. The way that, at some points, there's some teams that had some big wins in non-con, some teams who've gotten into conference play and kind of gotten their act together. Northwestern at 30. Penn State at 34, Michigan at 36, the talented Indiana Hoosiers at 47, and Nebraska at number 48. So as of right now, 5 Big Ten softball teams in the top 50 of the RPI. And that's, of course, one big metric, Sammy Netling, that will play a factor in who ends up making the NCAA tournament. The conference tournament in the Big Ten, of course, you'll have the automatic qualification from that also. But when you look at Northwestern and Michigan, are they the 2 main teams that you believe would necessarily be solidified as of today in making the tournament?
I think those 2 and then Penn State as well. You see them, again, a top even Michigan in the RPI right now. And it's really been Northwestern and Penn State throughout the season that have maintained that, at-large bid projection. And so I think, barring anything crazy, of course, the Nittany Lions have their hands full this weekend going up against a tough Rutgers team. But barring anything crazy in this final weekend and the Big Ten tournament, I think it's Michigan, Northwestern, and Penn Sort of our first sures, at least from what we're seeing from the outside.
Is Indiana in a position where they may need to win the Big Ten tournament to make the NCAAs?
I think so. Of course, going up against a Northwestern, it doesn't hurt their RPI either way. But I think if Indiana can get a couple wins this weekend, especially in Evanston, I think it's huge in terms of padding that resume. But I do think the Hoosiers and the Huskers right now are very much kind of on the bubble. In some projections, you're seeing both as the last four in or the last four out. Either way, those are the ones that I think are the most flip of a coin right now in the projections.
Is Nebraska a team that's playing well enough where you think they could make a run once they get into the tournament?
I think so, and again, it's going to come down to their showing this weekend, right? So much of the selection committee's decision is about how are you trending at the end of the season, and so if they can have a strong showing against a good Gophers team and make a run in the tournament, I think they definitely pad their resume as well.
Real quick, is there one team who's maybe outside that top 3 or 4 that you could think could maybe be a spoiler in the Big Ten tournament?
Rutgers, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, they got the bats, they got the arms in the circle. Absolutely.
Cannot wait. The regular season ends this weekend, and the Big Ten tournament will be upon us. Thanks to all the guests for joining us, and thanks for you for joining the Big Show.